Hello everyone, I hope you are doing great. So I welcome you all today to the new lecture in which we'll be discussing about the cranial cavity. As you all know that the cranial cavity is going to have a wall that we discussed in the previous lecture, the superior and the inferior view of the wall of the skull, and today we'll be discussing about the base of the skull. It is a very important topic for the OSPE examinations and also for the osteology section, because you should necessarily know what are the different contents of the different foramens that are present within the base of the skull, right? So before starting, I should give you an overview of what is actually the base of the skull. It is going to contain three basic fossa. This is the anterior cranial fossa, then there is the presence of a middle cranial fossa and a posterior cranial fossa, each with a different demarcation and a different landmark, right? So firstly, talking about the anterior cranial fossa. The anterior cranial fossa is anteriorly marked by the frontal bone, right? Frontal bone, and medially is the presence of the ethmoid bone. Posteriorly is the lesser wing of the sphenoid, right? The ethmoid bone is actually going to have the cribriform. This is actually the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone with the crusti galli and a foramen cecum. We'll be discussing about this in a bit detail. Basically that this is the part. I'm just telling you about the basic summary of the anterior cranial fossa and the other fossas as well. So here is the presence of the cribriform plate with the perforations in the cribriform plate, and the crusti galli is also present, and the foramen cecum in the anterior cranial fossa, right? After that is the presence of a middle cranial fossa. The middle cranial fossa is anteriorly marked by the sphenoid bone, right? The lesser wing of the sphenoid. Posteriorly is the presence of petrous part of the temporal bone here, and laterally is the presence of the squamous part of temporal bone along with the parietal bone, right? There are the different landmarks here, if you could see. This is the depression. This depression is called as the hypophyseal fossa. And then the posterior to the depression is the presence of the dorsum sali, and you should know that the lesser wing of the sphenoid is going to have the anterior clinoid process, and here is the presence of the posterior clinoid process. This part elevation is called as the tuberculum sali, and here is a groove for the passage of the optic chiasma that leads into the optic canal. And then there is presence of superior orbital fissure. The foramen rotundum is present, this one, foramen spinosum, and a small the foramen ovale. This is the foramen ovale, and this is the foramen spinosum, a small. This is an oval foramen, and this is a small spinosum, right? Then the foramen lacerum, a irregular shaped that we discussed in the previous lecture as well. And here is the presence of the carotid canal in the internal acoustic meatus, this one. The jugular foramen. Alright, so we're now in the posterior cranial fossa. The posterior cranial fossa is made anteriorly with the temporal bone, and the occipital bone is present posteriorly with the groove for the different grooves as well, right? If you could see, this is the portion of the posterior cranial fossa. The posterior cranial fossa is also going to have the different foramens as well. There's the presence of a jugular foramen right here. This here is the presence of the, if you can see, a greater groove for the superior petrosal sinus, right? This is here a groove for the superior petrosal sinus. You can see a impression here, right? This is an impression for the trigeminal ganglion, and here for the arcuate eminence as well, right? There's the presence of ligamentum fanius in this part as well. This is actually a groove for the sigmoid sinus that is going to join the transverse sinus. This entire big is a groove for the transverse sinus in the occipital bone. Here is the presence of internal occipital protuberance that leads into the a groove again for the occipital sinus into the foramen magnum, right? So this was entirely about the base of the skull, but now we'll be discussing about the different structures from the actual skull view, right? So if you could see, as I've already explained, that the skull is going to contain the anterior cranial fossa. So firstly, discussing about the anterior cranial fossa, if you could see this portion, here's the presence of the sinus. This is the frontal sinus, a sinus in the frontal bone, right? Then this is the foramen cecum. The foramen cecum, it allows the passage of the emissary veins to the superior sagittal sinus, right? Then this is the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone, and the cribriform plate is going to have a sharp, edge that is called the crusti galli. The perforations that are present in the cribriform plate allows the passage of the first cranial nerve, that is the olfactory nerve, that is involved in the smell, in the sense of smell, right? So, and then in the anterior cranial fossa, the lesser wing of sphenoid is going to give the two sharp elevations, and these are called the anterior clinoid process. You can see this one and this one, and so it's basically going to make the anterior clinoid process, right? After that, there is the presence of the middle cranial fossa. In the middle cranial fossa, you can see a small, this is actually a deep structure, so a bit difficult to visualize here, but if you're having a skull, you need to look in this part, oh sorry, this part, right? This is going to make the optic canal. The optic canal, it is going to allow the passage of the optic nerve, the cranial nerve number 2, right? The first cranial nerve was the olfactory nerve, and the second cranial nerve is the optic nerve. And along with the optic nerve, the ophthalmic artery, it is also going to pass through this optic canal, right? Then next is the presence of superior orbital fissure. This, I think I should change the color to make it a bit visible. So yeah, this is the presence of the superior orbital fissure. The superior orbital fissure allows the passage. I've like labeled this diagram for you guys so it becomes easy. The superior orbital fissure is going to allow the passage of the cranial nerve number 3, 4, 5, and 6. The cranial nerve number 3 is the oculomotor nerve. Cranial nerve number 4 is trochlear nerve, and for the fifth nerve, it only allows the branches of the ophthalmic nerve, that is the first division of the trigeminal nerve, because the second and the third division is going to pass to the different foramen, right? So the superior orbital fissure allows the passage of oculomotor nerve, trochlear nerve, and the lacrimal frontal nasociliary branches of the ophthalmic nerve. Apart from that, it also allows the passage of the abducens nerve, that is cranial nerve number 6, and the superior ophthalmic vein, right? So you should not confuse this with the ophthalmic artery, because the optic canal here, it is going to allow the passage of the ophthalmic artery, right? But this superior orbital fissure allows the passage of ophthalmic vein, right? Superior ophthalmic vein. So artery goes first and then comes the vein. You can learn it like this, right? After that, here is the presence of the foramen rotundum, right? If you can see, this small foramen just below the superior orbital fissure is the presence of the foramen rotundum, and the foramen rotundum, it is basically going to allow the passage of the maxillary nerve, that is the second division of trigeminal nerve. You can see this is the foramen rotundum. Here was the optic canal and the superior orbital fissure, and just below the superior orbital fissure is the foramen rotundum, and this foramen rotundum here again, it allows the passage for this foramen rotundum. Okay, the foramen rotundum here, this was basically the optic canal inside the superior orbital fissure, and here is the presence of the foramen rotundum, right? The foramen rotundum allows the passage of the maxillary nerve, that is the second division of the trigeminal nerve, right? Then below the foramen rotundum, an oval foramen is present that we discussed already in the previous lecture. This foramen ovale, the foramen ovale allows the passage of the mandibular division of trigeminal nerve, and this mandibular division is actually the O3, that is the third branch, right? So the superior orbital fissure allows the first branch, the ophthalmic branch, and from the ophthalmic branch there will be the passage of lacrimal, frontal, and the nasociliary branches. The foramen rotundum allows the second branch, that is the maxillary branch, and the foramen ovale allows the mandibular branch of the trigeminal nerve, right? It's actually representing the Roman number 5, right? So the mandibular nerve is going to pass to the foramen ovale, and along with the mandibular nerve, there will also be the passage of the lesser petrosal nerve and the accessory meningeal artery. But you should know about the lesser petrosal nerve. After the passage of the mandibular division of trigeminal nerve, there is a presence of a small foramen that is called the foramen spinosum. And this foramen spinosum, or the spinosum, it is going to allow the passage of the middle meningeal artery, in the vein, along with the meningeal branches of the mandibular nerve, right? And as we have already seen in the previous lecture, between the vitreous part of temporal bone and the lesser wing of sphenoid occipital bone, there was a presence of an irregular foramen, and this irregular foramen is the foramen lacerum, right? The foramen lacerum, it is going to allow the passage of greater petrosal nerve, that is going to not going to pass into the foramen but passes over the foramen, right? So I should make it clear from this diagram as well. This is the optic canal with the supraorbital fissure. Here is the presence of foramen rotundum, the foramen ovale, this one, and the foramen spinosum. This irregular shaped is a foramen lacerum, right? And through here it is the presence of the carotid canal. This carotid canal leads to the exterior portion, to the exterior, the base of the skull, and that we have seen in the previous lecture. And then the hair in the interior view, there's the presence of the carotid canal, right? So this was the middle cranial fossa. Like after discussing about this middle cranial fossa, we'll be moving towards the next part I was explaining in the previous slide. If you could see, here is a sulcus chiasmatic, right? Sulcus, or the chiasmatic sulcus. Here, this is going to allow the passage for the optic chiasma, and the optic chiasma is going to lead into the optic canal, right? Here is the depression, and this entire depression here, it's actually called the hypophyseal pituitary fossa or the sella turcica, right? It's actually PUR turcica. Then there is the presence of an elevation on just dorsal to this sella turcica is the presence of a dorsum celli. This elevation on the dorsum celli, there are the two portions called the posterior clinoid process, are the two elevations are going to emerge, and like in the way the anterior clinoid process I've explained, the anterior clinoid process allows the attachment to the tentorium cerebelli. In a similar way, there is a presence of the posterior clinoid process, right? After that, there is the presence of the dorsum celli. This is the dorsum celli, and this is the tuberculum celli. It's actually a rounded elevation like a tubercle, so it's called the tuberculum celli, right? Then, as we have seen, an impression for the trigeminal ganglion and a groove for the superior petrosal sinus, right, or superior petrosal sulcus. Then we'll see the jugular tubercle. This is the jugular tubercle. We'll see it in the posterior cranial fossa, right? After that, we'll be moving towards the posterior cranial fossa. Here, okay, just give me a minute, please. Yeah, this is the arcuate eminence and the tegmentum fani. You can see this here, optic canal, supraorbital fissure, the foramen rotundum, ovale, and the spinosum, and here is the superior groove for superior petrosal sinus. This is the internal acoustic meatus, right? It's going to lead to the internal acoustic meatus, and this is the jugular foramen, right? Then here we'll be moving towards the posterior cranial fossa. In the posterior cranial fossa is the presence of the internal acoustic meatus. The internal acoustic meatus allows the passage of the facial nerve, that is cranial nerve number 7, and the cranial nerve number 8, that is called as the vestibulocochlear nerve. Along with that, it also allows the labyrinthine artery to pass through it, right? Then there is the presence of the jugular foramen. This jugular foramen. The jugular foramen allows the passage of the inferior petrosal sinus, like the superior petrosal sinus is present here. The inferior petrosal sinus is going to lead into the jugular foramen. Apart from that, the internal jugular vein is going to pass through the jugular foramen. And some important nerves are also going to pass through the jugular foramen, right? It's actually the 9th, 10th, and 11th cranial nerve. It's these 9th and 11th cranial nerves are written mistakenly. They're along with the jugular foramen. The cranial nerve, the glossopharyngeal nerve, the vagus nerve, and the spinal accessory nerve is going to pass through the jugular foramen. The foramen magnum is going to allow the passage of some other structures. It's a big mistake, sorry. So this is actually the jugular foramen. The jugular foramen allows the passage of what structures? It's actually the inferior petrosal sinus, the glossopharyngeal nerve, the vagus nerve, accessory nerve, sigmoid sinus, and the posterior meningeal artery, right? Here is the presence of a hypoglossal canal, this small hypoglossal canal just beneath the tubercles. These are the tubercles we were discussing, right? Jugular tubercles, and beneath this is the presence of the hypoglossal canal for the passage of the hypoglossal nerve, that is cranial nerve number 12. This big one is the foramen magnum. The foramen magnum allows the passage of the medulla oblongata, right, the meninges, vertebral arteries, and venous plexus, along with the meningeal branch of the vertebral arteries, and the spinal root of the accessory nerve is going to pass through the foramen magnum, right? Some of the other structures, here is the internal occipital protuberance that makes the internal occipital crust, and the sinus is also going to pass here. And nextly, there's the presence of the vermin fossa. This here is called as the vermin fossa. And lastly, but not the least, is the presence of the transverse sinus. The transverse sinus here, it is going to lead here the sigmoid sinus. Actually, sigmoid sinus is going to join the transverse sinus. So there's a groove present in the bony landmarks here. So that was a very easy way to learn how the different fossas and different foramens are going to allow the passage of different structures. You always know that there's a presence of the three fossas, anterior, middle, and the posterior cranial fossas. To summarize, here is the presence of the cribriform plate with the cristae. Cribriform plate is going to have the perforations for the first ophthalmic division, olfactory nerve. This is the olfactory nerve, cranial nerve number 1. And then in the middle cranial fossa, the presence of the optic canal that allows the optic, you should learn through the optic nerve. The optic canal allows the optic nerve. You can see cranial nerve number 1 going above first part from the cranial nerve number 1. The middle cranial fossa allows cranial nerve number 2, that is the optic nerve. Superior orbital fissure allows the cranial nerve number 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? And from the trigeminal nerve, it allows only the ophthalmic division of the trigeminal nerve to pass. The foramen rotundum allows the maxillary division, that is second division, and foramen ovale, the mandibular division of trigeminal nerve, right? The foramen lacerum allows the passage of the some other structures like the greater petrosal nerve is going to pass over the foramen, and the presence of internal acoustic meatus, the facial nerve number 7 and number 8 is going to pass through this area. Then the jugular foramen 9, 10, and 11 is going to pass. 9, 10, and 11 it is going to pass the jugular foramen. The hypoglossal nerve 12 is going to pass through the hypoglossal canal, and the spinal accessory nerve is going to pass through this foramen magnum, right? So this was entirely about the base of the skull. You should only know the structures that are very important landmarks, and very importantly learn about the different nerves passing through the foramen that I've labeled for you all as well. And I hope you all like this video, and if you like it, so do tell me about it, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because it really motivates me to take time for you all. And meet you in the next video. Thank you so much.